Am I the asshole for telling my neighbor it's not my problem her newborn wakes up to noises coming from my apartment? I recently moved into a one-bedroom apartment that had been vacant for a while. The unit is great overall, and I really like living here. I have a 2-year-old golden poodle. He will occasionally bark when he hears something outside my doorway in the hallway, but I work from home, so I'm almost always there, and I correct the behavior when it happens. It's usually just a couple of alert barks. Tonight, at around 7 p.m., I was having dinner with my sisters when my neighbor knocked on my door. She told me that my dog's constant barking has been disrupting her newborn's sleep, and that this has apparently been going on for weeks. She also said she has 2 dogs herself, and that she educated them not to bark, so I should be able to do the same with my dog. The thing is, my dog wasn't even barking when she knocked on the door, and I honestly don't believe he is barking constantly. Since I work from home, I would definitely notice if he was. I told her I would try my best to manage it, but also said that I can't control the fact that the building's sound insulation seems pretty poor. I can hear her baby crying through the walls quite often, but I've never complained, because that's just a part of apartment living. Babies cry, and dogs sometimes bark. Now, the whole interaction has made me really anxious and hyper-aware. If my dog barks even once, I immediately worry she's going to complain again. Am I the asshole for telling her that the building's thin walls are not really something that I can control? In the comments, Low Attention says, dog owners are almost always oblivious to how much their dog barks, so I'm inclined to side with the neighbor. This 100%. And I've met so many doodles that bark at every noise/movement. I have a golden, non-doodle, and we spent months ensuring that he does not bark at anything unless it's truly an emergency or terrifying. It was hard work, but worth it, and we live in a standalone home. I've lived in apartments with barky dogs, and it's such a nightmare. It's like the owners grow immune to it. No judgment. I suggest you audio or video record during the day so you can prove to the landlord how often your dog actually barks in case she puts a formal complaint in. I understand the suggestion, but maybe I have a feeling that it's going to backfire. If the dog truly didn't bark that much, the mother wouldn't notice. I have a feeling that dog probably barks non-stop. If you think that OP is just lying, then what's the point of engaging? Well, not lying. I just think a lot of people don't realize how much their own dog barks, especially at moments they aren't home themselves. You potentially are the asshole? Every dog owner I know underestimates how much their dog barks or how loud they are as they get used to it. As a dog owner, I fully agree with this. I always thought that my dog wasn't that loud, especially because he isn't one of those dogs that barks at everything, but he will do an occasional alert bark when he hears something or someone comes to the door. But once I had a newborn, I was shocked to realize that he actually is very loud. It was just that I had grown accustomed to it. And now, onto the update. This situation has made me very hyper-aware, so I've been paying close attention to my dog, Mini Golden Doodle, since the interaction. Last night and this morning, he didn't bark once, and honestly sleeps most of the day. We take long walks, and I play with him after feeding, and he's been trained since he was a puppy. I think part of the issue may be that my unit was vacant for a long time before I moved in, so they may have gotten used to total silence next door. I lived in my previous apartment for 2 years and never received a single complaint about my dog. My husband even added an extra layer of insulation around our front door to reduce hallway noise, and the building itself is very pet-friendly. There are probably more dogs than people here. I'm trying to empathize because I've never had a baby and maybe don't fully understand what she's going through with a newborn, but at the same time, I don't feel like I should have to tiptoe around my own home in fear that a single bark might wake her baby. Honestly, a peculiar situation to bring to the subreddit. I'm gonna go with no assholes here because I feel like unless I had solid evidence of what both people are experiencing in this situation, I can't make a solid judgment. Because there are so many ways that you could judge this based on the limited information, and a lot of people in the comments are obviously siding with a potential "you're the asshole" here. Because They believe most people severely underestimate or are just severely unaware of how much noise their own dogs make or their neighbors' dogs make. And those are all completely valid opinions, I think. I think your neighbor isn't wrong for being exhausted and desperate for sleep with a newborn child, but I don't think that makes you responsible for maintaining total silence in an apartment building. A dog having a couple of alert barks, now and then, that's fine. And a baby crying is also fine. That's just what happens with apartment living. People need to accept that. When it's within reason, it is fine. You handled this reasonably, OP. You acknowledged the concern of your neighbor. You said you would try to manage it. But you also pointed out the real issue. It's the fact that there are paper-thin walls between you guys. And that isn't something you can fix. That's just how it is. The anxiety that you're feeling is completely understandable, but I don't think you should live walking on eggshells constantly in your own home. If your dog truly is not making that much noise, then you're already doing what a responsible neighbor should in this instance. I don't think that makes you an asshole. Our next post is by user newcry2336, and it's titled, "Am I the asshole here for changing my underwear after a shower? My 40 female partner, male 45, thinks it's wrong that I change my underwear after a shower in the morning. So I get up to take my dog for a walk early in the morning and put clean underwear on. Then come home and have a shower and change my underwear. The walk is only 20 minutes, and this has now turned into an argument that I must be cheating. This morning, my underwear must have fallen from my arms as I was carrying washing to the laundry, and he messaged me saying that you left your spare knickers on the floor that you take to work. Hilarious. I told him that I change my underwear after a shower. It just doesn't feel right to put them on again. He's now saying that I must want to be fresh for work and the men there. So am I the bad guy here? Edit, I don't wear underwear to bed, so I have to put underwear on to take my dog for a walk. I then put fresh underwear on after my shower. In the comments, not the asshole. I, 37 female, always change to clean underwear after a shower, even if they're technically still clean. Same as you. Putting underwear back on just gives me the ick. I'm not trying to stir the pot here, but I have to ask, has your husband ever cheated in the past? A common psychological defense, projection, of people who have or are cheating is to accuse their partners of cheating. By accusing their partners, they alleviate their own guilt. It helps deflect suspicion and justify their actions. You need to sit your partner down and ask what you do in the run of a day to make him feel this insecure. Just the panties does not make any sense to mark someone as cheating. You've never cheated in the past or given him a reason to suspect or accuse something of this nature, have you? OP says, I haven't cheated, and this isn't the first accusation. I have been accused of cheating because I wore lip balm to work. I found out that he had been messaging a woman on Snapchat a few years back and calling her, etc., sending and receiving pics from her. Original commenter replies, I'm so sorry that you're going through this, but it's because your husband is unfaithful. If you're looking to patch things up, you're going to need counseling. Him especially. But I genuinely believe that the best thing you can do for yourself is get some evidence of unfaithfulness and divorce him. You deserve a partner who trusts you and loves you and puts you first. You shouldn't be anyone's second choice or backup. Looking for a unicorn says, from a guy's point of view, it's underwear. Who the fuck cares? You're basically exercising in them by taking the dog for a walk. If you don't want to put them back on, don't. And tell the guy, who probably doesn't even do the laundry, to go fuck himself. I've never heard of a person complaining because the other wants to feel clean and fresh. If he's arguing about this kind of nonsense now, I can't even begin to imagine what he'll think up the very next 10 years to be a dick about. Run and take all your panties with you. This is some serious red flag territory. As an autonomous adult woman, you're entitled to change any article of your clothing at any time for any reason, and it's no one's business. So no, not the asshole, but your partner is controlling and his suspicions are probably just telling on himself. Does he have a history of cheating? And now onto the update. He is adamant that no one else on the planet would put fresh underwear on after a shower if the ones that they were wearing had only been worn for a short time. And people that do that only do it for one reason: to cheat. Update 2. He demanded I give him my phone to look through. I handed it over to him and followed him out where he was sitting to take his phone. He said he had nothing to hide, but because I'm the one that needs to prove something, he doesn't need to let me look through his phone. He then gave me my phone back and said he would just wait until I was asleep, and he came in at 3 a.m. to take it. Also, on another note, I do 99% of the washing, and water and washing loads are not an issue in regards to that aspect. I did mention in a comment somewhere that going commando for the dog walk would be a whole other issue regarding him viewing that as easy access. But I appreciate each and every comment. I have laughed and cried in equal measure. Honestly, I think his behavior more than justifies leaving him. I don't even think you need evidence of cheating in this regard because you have seen him cheating in the past. But at this point, do you want to be treated like this in the relationship? Constantly on eggshells, constantly having anxiety around some bullshit that is all in their head? And now having to laugh and cry in equal measure. Ask yourself, if you want to be married to someone like that for the rest of your life, is that fair to yourself? And this is not some, you're the asshole, but to yourself for not getting away from them. I know that that's cringe when people say that. I don't like when people say that. But at this point in time, he has a history of cheating. He says that he has nothing to hide, and so you can't look through his phone when he's looking through yours? That alone makes me think that he's cheating again, and he just wants to delete all of the evidence because he didn't do it in this point in time. If you're married, you're supposed to be able to trust your partner fully and know that they have your best interests in mind and vice versa. That's not happening in this situation. You're not doing anything wrong in this situation, but the lack of trust and escalating suspicion and bullshit happening here would be too much for me to handle. And that's why I say I would leave if I was you. I implore you to leave, OP. Our next post is by user TraditionalBig6808, and it's titled, "Am I the arsehole here for being a bad godparent? Me, 36 male, and my husband Tom, 38 male, were asked to be godparents when my sister Allison, 34 female, and her husband Mark, 36 male, were pregnant with their first child. Tom and I took that to mean that if anything happened to Mark and Allison, we would be the legal guardians. However, it appears that Mark and Allison had a different idea. Less than a year after their first child was born, Allison became pregnant with their second child. Allison and I grew up in the US, but we come from an Indian background, so the idea of a godparent is not common in our culture. I was asked ahead of time to babysit their firstborn during the birth of their second child. At this point, I had moved for work and was now about a 2-hour drive away. I initially agreed and asked them to schedule sessions with me to teach me the basics of childcare because I've never been alone with an infant before. They agreed, but never actually followed through to schedule those sessions. As the induction date grew closer, I became increasingly nervous and eventually reneged less than a week before the birth, saying I wasn't comfortable doing this alone if they weren't going to do test runs with me. Mark and Allison were understandably very upset, but said they would figure something out. I have since apologized for this many times, and I know I really messed up here. A few months after the birth, Mark and Allison started asking me to drive over to their house and babysit. They'd usually ask me 1 to 2 days in advance, and they'd want me to babysit all day or overnight. On every one of these occasions, both parents were still in the house while I was babysitting. Despite their assurance that I would be reimbursed for tolls and gas, I never was. As time went on, my work got busier, and Tom started having health issues. My availability diminished more and more. I also suffered a workplace injury which made driving for long periods very painful. Despite all of this, I still went several times in an attempt to atone for my initial failure. But ultimately, it got to a point where I had to tell them that I was unavailable on several occasions. I offered an alternative date to babysit every time, but they usually weren't available on those dates. This past weekend, Mark and Allison asked to meet up for dinner. They chose a place that was an hour's drive from me, and since I'm still recovering from my injury, my doctor advised against long drives. I asked them if we could meet closer to my home, but they said that we would have to take a rain check instead. Later that evening, they called me and explained that the reason they wanted to have a dinner was because they were unhappy with my lack of involvement as a godparent. They said that I'd not met their expectations in helping out with their children. I acknowledged their concerns and apologized again for reneging on my initial agreement during the birth of their second child. I also apologized for not being available to babysit on many occasions. I offered to pay for babysitting, but my sister said she doesn't trust babysitters. She'd heard many horror stories involving babysitting services, and I then offered to watch the kids if Mark and Allison were willing to drop them off at our home. They thanked me for the offer, but didn't accept. They told me that if I couldn't meet their expectations, they would have to dedicate their energy to finding help from their local community, which would mean that they would also not be available to meet up with us for social events. They were very apologetic about this, which I found strange. I told them that they didn't need to apologize, and that Tom and I understood. We took no offense to them not being available. When we ended the conversation, I felt that we were mostly on the same page, but they still seemed disappointed. I feel bad about not being available and not meeting their expectations. I know I was in the wrong for my initial reneging during the birth, but since then, I have tried my best and have only refused to help out when it truly was infeasible. Am I the asshole here for not meeting their expectations as a godparent? In the comments, not the asshole. Godparents are not free babysitters. They are there to spiritually guide the child and be the legal guardian if anything happens to the parents. Yep, this. My husband and I chose husband's brother as godfather, and then he moved to the other side of the world. He sends our daughter gifts and videos of his adventures. Not the asshole. Being a godparent doesn't mean driving 2 hours one way to babysit while the parents are home. It doesn't even imply that you'll be a guardian in the event that something happens to the parents. It usually means that you'll facilitate the child growing up in the religion of their parents. Catholics have godparents for this reason. Please do not feel bad. Your sister and brother-in-law have very demanding expectations, considering you live far away and you and your husband are now dealing with health issues. Maybe it depends on where you live or your culture, but being a godparent is really about spiritual guidance. At least as a practicing Catholic, that's what it is to me. The idea that a godparent becomes the legal guardian maybe was a thing back in the day, but you'd still need to stipulate that in a will or legal document. I'm a godmother to 3 kids, and I asked what their expectations were and told them mine, and if expectations didn't match, I wouldn't have said yes. So on one hand, not the asshole because it doesn't mean that you're a free babysitter and at their beck and call, but also everyone sucks here because you all didn't discuss what was expected and I guess just assumed. OP says, yeah, in hindsight, I should have pushed for sitting down and having a conversation about expectations before moving forward. I did know that all my friends never really knew their godparents to a great extent, so I didn't think that there would be such a high expectation placed on us when we were asked to be godparents. We also were not at the christening, so I don't even know if we would even qualify to be godparents in the eyes of the church. Tom and I also aren't Christians, so we didn't go through any of the conventional stuff that I heard godparents go through. And now, onto the update. A couple weeks ago, my sister Allison told me my brother-in-law Mark was having a tough time due to personal trauma from his past. I decided to send him a voice message, letting him know that I'm thinking of him and that I'm there for him if he ever wants to talk. He responded saying thanks. A week later, I got a text from Mark that left me baffled and upset. He started as if we were already mid-conversation, which immediately threw me off, and brought up a time when I had been homeless and hoped to stay with them, but he'd talked me out of it. He also brought up a time when I let my sister move across the country to stay with me for half a year for her work. Apparently, he hadn't wanted her to move at all, which came as a surprise because neither of them had ever mentioned that he felt that way. Both of these incidents happened close to 10 years ago, long before they had their kids. So I have no idea why he brought them up. He then claimed he was in danger of losing his job and hinted that me not babysitting played a role in that. They are usually very private and had never mentioned to me previously that his job was at risk. He ended his rant by referencing the incident from my previous post when I backed out of babysitting their firstborn during the birth of their second child. I was floored. I initially tried to call him, but he didn't pick up. I texted him expressing my confusion about where all of this was coming from and offered to have a more in-depth conversation to air everything out so we could be on the same page. I explained again why I couldn't make the 2-hour round trip to babysit due to my and my husband Tom's health issues. I once again offered to watch the kids at my place if Mark and Allison were willing to drop them off here. I even apologized again for everything that happened prior. Mark never responded. After processing the incident, I started feeling angry. I texted Allison about what had happened and told her that I wanted an apology from Mark. Nearly a week later, she called me and told me to wait, and that he would call me when he was ready. She apologized on his behalf and stressed that it was a rough time for them. It turns out that Mark had already lost his job. I still have no idea why, how, or exactly when that happened. She expressed that she was also upset about my lack of involvement with the kids. She mentioned that he hadn't shown her the text that he sent me, but that he'd told her that he just said what was on his mind. Every time I tried to bring up the specifics of what Mark said, she just told me that I'd have to talk to him about it. She then asked if I could babysit that weekend. I refused, telling her I wasn't comfortable babysitting until I talked to Mark and received an apology from him. Last night, Mark finally called me. He didn't apologize, but informed me that I would no longer be godfather. He also mentioned that he'd blocked me after his initial text, so he never received any of my responses. I asked why he brought up incidents from almost 10 years ago, and he said that he just meant that it was impressive to see how far I'd come in life in the past 10 years. I responded that his texts were resentful rather than impressed, and he denied that that was the case. He then launched into a list of grievances, most of which they'd never mentioned to me before. For example, he complained that I hadn't helped out enough when I'd been over to babysit and had just watched TV. I tried to explain that I repeatedly asked for ways I could help out, but Allison had refused to give me anything to do and instead told me to make myself comfortable. So I just sat with the kids. I even mentioned that at one point I had to repeatedly insist that she go take a nap and that I would watch the kids. It took multiple times for her to be assured that it was okay before she finally agreed. Every time I gave an explanation or a rebuttal, he told me that I'd just have to talk to my sister about it because he was asleep at the time, and he was just hearing all of this secondhand from her. The call ended with him telling me that if I wanted to be godfather, I'd have to show them that I was going to step up to the plate. He told me that I'm still family and that he cared about me, so I thought that was at least a step in the right direction. I am still baffled by this entire situation and how it got to this point. I guess I'll update if anything else happens, but I'm really hoping it'll be positive. In the comments, dude, drop the rope. Being an uncle or godparent doesn't mean parenting. I'm an aunt to a gaggle of adorable humans, but I do not want kids. Thus, I have very strict boundaries on what I will do, and my friends respect that. If he was losing his job, it's because they didn't prepare for the kids they had. That's on them, not you. Stop trying to jump through hoops here. Let them pick another godparent who probably will also disappoint them when they won't drop their life for their poor planning. My favorite auntie was made a godmother to a friend's kid before her son was born, and I don't think she ever met him more than a handful of times, much less babysat him at all. They lost touch when the kiddo was still pretty young. As it's been more than 30 years at this point, I can't remember the specifics offhand. People just think because they have kids that everyone's lives center around them, which isn't true. Even grandparents are allowed to say no, I'm enjoying retirement. Wow. Brother-in-law sounds like someone not mature enough to be married or have kids. I feel bad for the kids, but this idiot's revoking your godfather status might turn out the best for you. Genuinely, at this point, what the fuck is the point of being a godparent when you're putting yourself out so much? And then, like I've crashed out about before, people bringing up bullshit grievances from the past in which you didn't actually do anything wrong, but for some fucking reason, they want to sit on it and be pissed off about and then bring up later when it's convenient for them. But somehow, in the 10 years since those events, they've never thought to bring it up until, oh, look, there's a situation where I'm very angry at you over something that is my fault. How about I dig up some bullshit and throw it in your face? It doesn't make any sense to do that, but it feels good to do it because I'm an emotional little baby. I hate people like that. You're not the asshole in this situation, OP. Rejoice in the fact that you are no longer a godparent, i.e. free on-call childcare that you have to drive 2 hours for and back and not be reimbursed for. Fuck that. You tried to meet them halfway so many times. You have done so much to try and be there for them, but every solution you suggested was directed. What is the point anymore? The biggest problem in the room is obviously communication. Instead of telling you directly what they wanted, they decided to keep a running list of grievances and then dump it all on you because they can, because it feels good. And then they play a game of ping pong with you. I don't want to talk about it and I don't want to listen to the text messages in specifics. You can talk to him about it. My wife, she told to come talk to me about everything that's going on here. Yeah, I wasn't actually there for a lot of it, so I've just heard offhanded comments from her. You need to talk to her about it, not me. Those lot are emotional vampires. They're just sucking the life energy out of you. If I was in your shoes, OP, I would stop beating myself up for being their emotional punching bag. And honestly, just block them for like 3 months. Give them the silent treatment. Let them figure their shit out. Don't let them disturb you and come back when they have sorted their lives out more. But that's just me. Anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to end today's episode. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.